Hey there, my name is Katie. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to share with you how it is that I went from someone who was drinking a bottle of wine every single night and really binge drinking and heavy drinking on the weekends to someone who was drinking a couple of glasses of wine a couple of times a month. I'm so excited to share this information today. My whole channel is devoted to this method because in 2017, I started on this treatment protocol, which I'm going to share with you more about today. And it just totally changed my relationship with alcohol like nothing else had. And so as soon as I started to see these changes in myself, I just felt so inspired to share this information with the world, because this treatment protocol, even though it's super effective, it's clinically proven to have a 78% success rate, it's wildly unknown, and most people don't know that it even exists. And I see so many people out there struggling, like I did for nearly a decade, of just white knuckling it, trying to quit drinking, taking breaks from drinking, whether it's a week-long break, a month-long break, thinking that's going to help us reset our drinking habits. But if you're anything like me, my drinking only seemed to be getting worse every time that I did that. And so I was really frustrated, kind of stuck in this cycle of daily drinking and really wanting to get out of that, but also not wanting to be someone who had to quit drinking forever. But then when I would try to moderate my drinking, I was just white knuckling it and feeling really frustrated that I couldn't drink how I wanted to. And just, it was so much work, honestly. I remember I would be like, okay, I'm only gonna have 2 glasses of wine tonight, and I'd try to savor them and sip on them, and by the second glass I'd be like, oh, I want to have more, and I would have to force myself not to. Oftentimes I would drink beyond the goal limit that I set for myself, and so it was just so much work to try to moderate my drinking. So it was easier for me to just let myself drink however much I wanted, which was at least a bottle of wine in the evenings. But then, of course, we know where that all leads to, which is hangovers and just not great feeling. So I was really frustrated. I wanted to find a way, like I said, to moderate my drinking, because when I first started drinking, I had a lot more control. I was someone who was more indifferent to alcohol, and I could take it or leave it. I could have a couple of drinks and not feel like I needed more. And I really wanted to get back to that, but I couldn't figure out how. And in 2017, I was scouring YouTube like I usually did, trying to find an answer to my drinking, searching things like alcohol cravings and how to control your drinking, how to be a moderate drinker. And oftentimes when I would do this, I would find really inspiring videos of people who would quit drinking through programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, or they're using Smart Recovery, or they just quit drinking on their own. And I would watch these videos and I'd be so inspired. And maybe I would try to quit drinking thinking, okay, I can do this. And, I'd go a couple days or a couple weeks or even a couple of months. But then ultimately I would just have such a strong urge to drink, or I would have a trigger happen and it would just set me back to where I was before. And so I kept thinking that something was wrong with me. None of these treatment protocols were working for me. They're working for other people, but why aren't they working for me? And so one day in 2017, again, like I said, I was searching on YouTube trying to find an answer, and I finally discovered that there is a method that can help you to unlearn alcohol addiction. It does not require abstinence, and it can truly take you back to a place of being a normal drinker. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be someone who could have a couple of glasses of wine here and there, and enjoy wine at a wedding or on vacation or things like that. I didn't want to have this rigid, like, abstinence only sobriety for the rest of my life. And so the treatment protocol that I discovered in 2017, it's known as the Sinclair Method. And this method, it's been around for over 30 years. It was discovered in Finland 30 years ago by a man named Dr. David Sinclair. And it's an incredibly effective method at healing the root cause of problem drinking, which I have since learned is inside of our brain. When we have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, our brain has essentially been hijacked by the alcohol use disorder. And the reason for that is when we drink, it's really, really pleasurable. And it gives us so much pleasure, like twice the pleasure we get from even food or sex or other pleasurable things in life. And so it's very reinforcing for our brain. Our brain really is wired to remember and seek out things that give us pleasure. And so every time we're drinking, we're kind of teaching our brain, hey, you are, here's this huge reward from alcohol. And over time, our brain adapts to that and it begins to expect that reward from alcohol. And it really literally rewires our brain. And so our brain is essentially wired to crave alcohol. If we don't have alcohol, it's craving that pleasure hit. And when we do get that pleasure hit, we don't really have an off switch and we just start chasing the buzz and we're off to the races. And so with this treatment protocol, the Sinclair Method, it involves taking a medication called Naltrexone. And this is a generic medication. It does require a prescription in most parts of the world. It's over the counter in some countries, but it's a generic medication, so it's really cheap. If you have a prescription plan, sometimes it can be free or maybe $10. I remember when I got it without insurance, it was like 20 or 30 bucks a month. So it's very affordable. It's not an addictive medication whatsoever. Sometimes people think, oh, you're just replacing one substance, alcohol, for another, this medication. And that's not true at all. This medication is something that's quite benign. You can think of it like taking an over-the-counter aspirin medication. But it's a medication that it's an opiate blocker medication, and not to be confused with opiates. It's a blocker. And so what happens when you take this medication is it blocks receptors in your brain that would otherwise be getting that huge reward from alcohol. And so it doesn't make you sick or anything. What it does is it really starts to give your brain an off switch with alcohol, because quote unquote normal drinkers have an off switch with alcohol where maybe they have 2 or 3 drinks and they're feeling, a little buzzed, but they're satisfied. They don't really want more. But when we have alcohol use disorder, we don't really have an off switch. And so we're never really satiated when it comes to alcohol. And that's why for me, I could drink until blackout or brownout or passing out. It was just like I had no off switch with alcohol. And so as we get going on this medication, because it's blocking that huge reinforcement that our brain gets when we drink, it's starting to give us an off switch. And so for me, what this looked like was, again, I started this protocol drinking a bottle of wine every single night. And really, I would drink as much as I wanted on the weekends, because usually I could easily drink more than a bottle, but that was kind of my way to keep it reined in and, not be super hungover at work the next day and things like that. But it was really easy for me to just, like I said, keep drinking until I blacked out or passed out. And so as I got going on this medication treatment, what I noticed was that I really started to feel more satiated around my alcohol, where I would have 3 or 4 glasses. And again, a bottle of wine is like 5 glasses of wine. I'd have 3 or 4 glasses, which is still more than, a woman my age should be drinking. But this is where I started the method. I would have 3 or 4 glasses and just feel like, I don't really want another one. Like it doesn't sound good. And I know this is hard for some people to conceive if they are, in the place where I was for 10 years of really struggling with alcohol use disorder, where we have 3 or 4, and of course we want to have more. But I had a client once equate it to how she went through the method and got to her personal goals, which was a moderate relationship with alcohol. And she said, my relationship with alcohol now is a lot like my relationship with ice cream cones. I like ice cream. I like to go out for ice cream. Maybe I'll get a double scoop of ice cream. But after I finish that cone, I don't really want another cone. I just, it was enjoyable, but I don't want another one. And so the same thing is happening with her drinking now. She likes to drink. She'll go out. Maybe she'll have 1 or 2 drinks, but she doesn't want to have more than that. She just feels satiated. And so the same thing happened for me too as I got started on the method. And an important thing to remember with this medication treatment protocol is that it's a long-term treatment. We have a program where we guide people through it, and we typically tell them to give it a year. Some people will be pleasantly surprised and reach their goals in 6 months, and others it might take longer. But what's really encouraging with this treatment protocol is that over the course of a year, people are seeing progress along the whole way. It's kind of like a weight loss journey where, you need time. If you've got to lose 30 or 40 pounds, you need time to lose that weight in order to sustainably lose it and change habits. But over time, every week, maybe you're losing a pound, or, just seeing yourself get more energy, or seeing yourself really become a healthier, better version of yourself. And so the same thing is true with this treatment protocol, is that it's a long-term treatment protocol, but over time, you're seeing yourself make bits of progress. And it's so encouraging as you witness yourself really gaining your power back and your control back over alcohol. And so with the medication treatment, the medication Naltrexone, following the Sinclair Method, is only taken when you drink. So it's taken in a targeted dose 1 to 2 hours before you drink, just so that it can block that reward or the reinforcement that you get when you drink alcohol. Block those endorphins that latch on and cause us to develop alcohol use disorder to begin with. A lot of people ask me, oh, like if it's not pleasurable anymore, then what's the point in drinking? Or, maybe someone's not going to be disciplined enough to take the pill if they're not getting the pleasure from it. And so I will say, a lot of people actually still really enjoy drinking on this medication. It's not like it totally blocks the pleasure. You are still getting some enjoyment from it. And in fact, for me, and I've heard this from so many other clients as well, is that they actually enjoy drinking more on the medication because they have control, because they have the off switch, because they're now the normal drinker. I know I really enjoyed it a lot more because I could go out to a bar with friends, whereas before I would get blackout drunk and need to take an Uber home and just do or say things I totally regretted. I could know I was going to go out with friends and I would just take my medication before, and I would have a couple glasses of wine that I would really sip on and savor, and I wouldn't want to have more. And so yes, you're not getting as much of a reward because you're not getting the euphoria that alcohol can give, but you're having more of a balanced relationship with it, to where you really do become that normal drinker. I remember I would look at people and see that they would, only drink their half a glass of wine and leave the rest in the glass, or they'd have one drink and not order more. And I'd be like, how do they do that? Like, isn't that so much work for them to do that? But it's not. If they don't have an alcohol use disorder, it's not a lot of work. It's just natural. Like how we might have a big piece of cake and one cake is enough. We're not going to get 2 or 3 because we're kind of grossed out at the thought of it. That's what normal drinkers feel like. They get the buzz, they enjoy alcohol, but they don't really want to have more. And so the same thing is true as we use this medication treatment and slowly teach our brains that alcohol is not giving us this huge endorphin reward anymore. And we really get to a place where we can become a more normal drinker and have a more balanced relationship with alcohol. So I started this method, as I said, drinking about a bottle of wine every night. And over time, what happened is that my drinking just gradually decreased, and I was having more and more alcohol-free days. So before this method, I would force alcohol-free days where I could easily drink 7 days a week, like on and on and on and on. And I would have to force myself to have alcohol-free days because I'd think, oh man, I haven't had an alcohol-free day in 2 weeks. Like, that's not good. I need to have one. And it was always very forced and white-knuckled. Sometimes I would have alcohol-free days simply because I'd be so hungover that I was too sick to even drink. But those were more just like recovery days in my mind. Like, they weren't really, productive alcohol-free days. And so alcohol-free days for me were very hard to come by before this method. And what happened for me was, in the first week of using this method, and this isn't true for everyone, everyone has different experiences with the method, and we all have different relationships with alcohol. Sometimes people like me, I had an alcohol use disorder where I was drinking 7 days a week. I work with people that are more binge style drinkers where they don't drink all week, but then they binge drink on the weekends and they want to rein that in and have more control. Or people who are drinking a couple days a week. Like, there's no two exact experiences of problem drinking, and that's why we prefer the term now alcohol use disorder, because it's more of a spectrum and it can look different person to person. And so as I was progressing on this method, what I noticed within the first week for me was that I was able to have an alcohol-free day. And it was pretty effortless. Like, it did require some thought and I had the option, like, yeah, I could drink tonight, but maybe I don't really want to. Maybe I want to go do this instead. And so in my first week of using this method, I was able to have an alcohol-free day that was really not a lot of effort. And then as I progressed further along on this method, I was drinking, I went from a bottle of wine a night. I remember within the first month, I was not able to even finish a bottle of wine in the nighttime anymore. I was having like 3 or 4 glasses. And then I was starting to have, again, like more regular alcohol-free days where maybe once a week I was having an alcohol-free day that didn't feel white-knuckled and felt, I wouldn't say effortless, but they certainly did become effortless the longer I was on the method. But they became much easier, to where it wasn't this battle of like forcing myself not to. It was like, yeah, I could drink, but I think instead I'm going to go for a walk or go hang out with a friend. It was just a lot easier to do. And so over the course of a year, my relationship with alcohol completely changed through this method. And it was a gradual change, which was really nice because I was so used to the traditional ways of fixing problems with alcohol, which is like cold turkey abstinence. You're white knuckling it, you're kind of forcing it, you're filling your life with all these other things, trying to create new hobbies and habits. And I know obviously that works for people. I see their stories online and I just think more power to them, because it was never sustainable for me. What I really loved about this protocol is that it was very gentle. And it was a very sustainable way for me to truly change my relationship with alcohol over time. And again, like I love to equate it to like a weight loss journey. Like if you give yourself enough time to lose weight, you can sustainably change your habits and become a healthier person, as opposed to like a crash diet overnight fix of, I got to lose weight, I'm going to go on this calorie restricted diet and work out like crazy. Like that for me was like what the cold turkey abstinence was. It was just like, okay, I'm going to force myself to do this, but it wasn't sustainable. And so with this approach, it truly became sustainable because I was able to just integrate this medication into my already established habits of drinking and know that by taking this medication, it was slowly working to fix my brain so that my brain was no longer wired to crave alcohol. So the longer I was on the method, the better progress that I saw. And this is true for people. Like sometimes they get going on it thinking it's going to be an overnight fix or in a month everything's going to be better. But we have to remember that it took us time to develop our unhelpful habits with alcohol, and it will take time to unlearn them as well. And so that's why, again, in our program, we typically say, give it a year. You might be pleasantly surprised, and it might take you longer, and that's okay too. Everyone's different. But the longer you're on it, for most people, the better it works. And so the longer I was on it, I just remember around month 4, I got into a place where I was drinking like 3 or 4 days a week. I was having 3 or 4 alcohol-free days a week. And when I was drinking, I would typically have 2 or 3 drinks. I wouldn't really drink more than that. And at that point, hangovers were really a part of my past. I never really experienced hangovers again, or very rarely, because I was drinking such a small amount that I wasn't experiencing hangovers or blackouts. That's something else I want to say. As I got going on this method, I never experienced another blackout because I was drinking in such a lower quantity that I was no longer blacking out or drinking until blackout, which was amazing. And one of the biggest things that I realized through this treatment protocol was how much I was craving alcohol and thinking about alcohol, and I didn't even know it. And through this method, what happened for me and what happens for almost all people who go on it is that we no longer crave alcohol. The craving for it gradually fades away. And by craving, I mean the obsessive thoughts that we have about drinking. Before I got going on this method, almost every morning I would wake up and tell myself, okay, I'm not going to drink tonight. Like I'm going to have an alcohol-free day. I can't drink tonight. And then by the time 11 o'clock would roll around, I'd start thinking, well, wine might be nice tonight. No, I can't drink tonight. And then by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd be like, should I drink tonight? And then certainly by 5 o'clock on my way home, I'd be stopping at the store and getting wine. And so I basically would start thinking about alcohol around 11 o'clock every single day. And as I got going on this treatment protocol, after a couple months, I would realize like, oh my gosh, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I haven't thought about drinking today. And sometimes people will report this. I hear it all the time where they literally forget to drink, which sounds insane. But people will they'll take the medication, they'll plan to drink, and they'll pour a glass of wine or a beer, and they're like, oh shoot, 30 minutes has gone by and I forgot I poured that, or it's sitting right there. I didn't even think about drinking it. And so it's really amazing how this method works to heal, again, the root cause of where our alcohol use disorder lives, which is inside of the brain. And so many abstinence-based treatment programs don't really think about that, don't really think about the fact that our brain has literally been rewired when we have alcohol use disorder, and it's wired to crave. And so, we can go cold turkey abstinent on the outside and that might look good, but what's going on inside of us? Are we having an internal conflict around, whether or not we want to drink, telling ourselves we shouldn't drink? Are we thinking about alcohol? For me, that was like no way to live. Like I before this method, I was able to make it 6 months sober one time, but in the back of my mind, I always knew I'm like, I'm going to drink again one day. It's just a matter of time. Like I just knew that was there. And the whole time I was kind of fighting cravings and fighting urges to drink. And so that's one of the things that's so radically different about this treatment protocol is that we're no longer having that internal conflict around, to drink or not to drink, because we can allow ourselves to drink. And by taking this medication beforehand, every time we're drinking, we're working to rewire our brain and ultimately get us to the end goal of this method, which the term is pharmacological extinction, or extinction of the alcohol addiction. So the end goal of this method is really your brain gets rewired essentially to the place it was before you had alcohol use disorder. And so when people get to that point, a lot of people still keep alcohol in their life, but they're able to do so with moderation. You know, they can have the glass of champagne at a wedding, or they can have their wine on the weekends with friends, or whatever that looks like to you. People can keep alcohol in their life. The important thing is that the medication is something you do continue to take for as long as you continue to drink. It's always taken 1 to 2 hours before the first drink of the day. And this medication really serves as your protector in a sense, to where it's not going to allow your brain to relearn the patterns of problem drinking, because it can be relearned. I've known people who were on this method, they achieved great success, and then they returned to drinking again without the medication, and their brain was able to relearn their patterns within a month or two. With that said, I've known a handful of people who were able to return to drinking again without the medication, and they were able to do so in moderation. But those were people who really had, truly changed their relationship with alcohol, and they had a lot more structure around their drinking, to where, they never drank when they were emotional, or they never used it as a coping tool, and they always drank with food. They weren't drinking every single day. They were moderating their drinking. So it is possible, but in my case, if I were to drink, I would take the medication an hour before, just so my brain is protected. And then other people, once they reach extinction, they quit drinking because they just kind of lose interest in alcohol. And this is actually what happened to me. I never planned that, to be honest. When I learned that this method existed and that you could keep alcohol in your life, I was sold. I was so excited that I could keep alcohol in my life and I didn't have to quit drinking. But after a year on this treatment protocol, I just got to a place where I really didn't like drinking anymore. Like, alcohol didn't add anything to my life. And at that point, I was drinking about 1 drink once a month. And because I was drinking so infrequently, even when I would just have that 1 drink, I would feel it the next day. Like, my body was not used to having alcohol in my system. So that even 1 drink would kind of like throw me off the next day. And so I just got to this point of like not really caring for alcohol anymore, and really having a life that I didn't want, like, it didn't require me to use alcohol anymore. And so what happened for me was I just kept going longer and longer without drinking. I went a month, and then I went 2 months and 3 months. And then by month 4, I just told myself, well, it's been 4 months since I've drank. Maybe I'll tell myself that I'm not going to drink anymore. So I haven't drank in 3.5 years because of this method. And I honestly haven't even looked back or thought about drinking or like wanted to drink. I still have the medication, and that's like, it's not an option that's off the table for me. I still entertain the idea of drinking again at some point. My husband's from France. They have great wine there. So when we go visit, like, the option is there for me to enjoy wine on a vacation or champagne at a wedding. But I just haven't done it because I haven't had a strong enough urge to drink since going through this protocol and reaching extinction. I would say most people who go on this method, 75%, if I was going to guess, they do have a goal of moderate drinking, and they're able to sustain that, and they keep alcohol in their life. And then others like myself end up going abstinent just through this protocol, as your brain really unlearns the pattern of problem drinking. So one thing I do want to say too, that I think, just to kind of lay the expectation, because I'm just going to be honest, when I started on this, I thought, oh, a medication, like, I'm just going to let this pill fix all my drinking problems. And I see that happen with some people too, where they think that just by taking a pill, it's going to fix their problems with alcohol. And I will say, like, I would not be where I am today without that medication and that protocol. It's truly the foundation that I needed to build from. But we really do obviously have to change our habits and our lifestyle and our coping tools over time as well. As a coach and in our program, the most common thing that people are challenged by with this method is changing their habits. You can get on a medication and it can, really squash your urge to drink. But if you don't have other routines that you enjoy to do in the evenings, like for me, my bottle of wine a night ritual, if you don't have other things that you're doing that are really fulfilling and bringing you enjoyment, we can continue in the habit of drinking even if we don't really want to. And back to the food example, how we can continue to keep eating even when we're full. It's like we're not in tune with that off signal, and maybe we're using it as a coping tool in a sense. So the medication is really a crucial component to having success with moderating your drinking, or getting to a place where you're able to quit drinking without having cravings or urges to drink. But there is a whole other component of it that is really lifestyle, habit, and behavior change. So we often say the medication and the Sinclair method is 50% of it, and then the other 50% of it is, okay, what am I going to do with my time? How am I going to change my habits? I use wine to kind of escape after my busy, stressful work day, or, after I put the kids to bed. What else am I going to do now? And as I mentioned earlier, the beauty of this method is that it's gradual. And so it's not something you have to figure out overnight. It's more of a process of gradually shifting your habits and trying new things and seeing what sticks. I use wine for everything, but as I was trying to get out of that habit of just nightly drinking, I would try so many other things. I would take hot baths, I would do aromatherapy, I would go exercise, I would watch a funny movie, I would just do anything that I could that was like a low bar to entry, something simple for me to try. But I really had to teach myself new ways to cope and new ways to spend my time. And this is a process that can sometimes be uncomfortable, because if you're in a habit or routine that you've been in for years or decades, just human nature, it's, difficult for us to change those habits. But just want to, point out that is really an important part of this treatment protocol. It's not just a magic pill that's going to fix everything. I thought that, honestly, I was a little naive, and I work with clients. We kind of have that belief that, okay, this pill's going to fix everything. But that is also one of the biggest criticisms I get from people about this method is like, oh yeah, right, a pill's not going to fix everything. No, it's not going to fix everything, but it's going to give you the foundation so that you can. It's going to quiet your brain so that you're no longer craving alcohol, so that you can think about and do other things. I remember for me, like when I would try to be sober before this treatment protocol, it's like I was constantly resisting the urge to drink, and I would try to just like make myself busy and preoccupy my mind and distract myself from my true desire that my brain was telling me, which was, I want to drink, I want to drink, I want to drink. And so as that quieted down, it was like, oh, I had more space in my mind to go on a hike and genuinely enjoy it, or take a bath and not be thinking, oh, I wish I could have wine right now with the bath. So it's a gradual process over time. And like I said, I would not be where I am today without this medication treatment. And yeah, it's an incredibly powerful method. I started this YouTube channel over 4 years ago now, when I started on this protocol, because I was so shocked at how well it worked, and that there was very little information about it, especially at that time. There is more information about it out there now, but it is still relatively unknown. I hear from people every day. They're like, why didn't I hear about this before? Why is this so, under the radar? Why don't more people know about this? And that's a topic for another video. But I will say, Naltrexone, the medication, is FDA approved for treatment of alcohol addiction. But a lot of physicians will prescribe it daily with abstinence, or daily in the morning. And following the Sinclair method, the data just shows that is such a far more effective way to use the medication. And there's benefits to it as well, which, if you're not having to take a pill every day in the morning, you're only taking it when you drink, you don't have to take the medication as often. And the way that the medication works, which is again a topic for another video, but it's really beneficial when you are taking it and is blocking the reward you're getting from alcohol. But then on the days you're not drinking, your brain is then extra sensitive, essentially, and able to get reward from other things in life, like exercise or massage or time with your family or food. And so it really teaches your brain that, hey, alcohol does not equal the reward it used to. And then maybe your brain is experiencing pleasure and reward and endorphins from other things. And so if you're wondering, like, how do I get started on this treatment protocol? First of all, if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for sticking around. This medication is more widely available now if you get it from your general practitioner. Some will give it to you, some won't give it to you just because they're not trained in addiction treatment. But just be mindful that the Sinclair Method protocol is the most effective way to take the medication. There's a book about this protocol called The Cure for Alcoholism. It talks about the science behind the method. You can get it on Amazon or Audible. We offer a program that guides people through the Sinclair Method, thrivealcoholrecovery.com. And when you join with us, we will refer you to a telemedicine physician to get you started on a prescription for the medication. And we will work with you to help you really change lifestyle and habits around drinking, and also help you with just like the practical tips of how to take the medication, how to make the most of it, and really make the most of this treatment protocol. It's a long-term as I said, it's a long-term treatment protocol. So our program will support you for as long as you need it. And yeah, do more research. You know, if you just Google the Sinclair Method or look here on YouTube or look at the other videos, I have I think almost 200 videos on my channel where I have a lot of success stories of people who've gone through it. There's more and more information out there about naltrexone and the Sinclair Method. So I just encourage you to do your research. This method is not like anything else I've ever seen. You know, one of the best thing about it, I think, is that it gives us the option to keep alcohol in our life if we want to. I know for me, kind of looking at my future of just like, I could never drink again. That was always such like a bleak experience. And I just had this overwhelming sense of FOMO, you know, fear of missing out. And so it was really nice to get going on a treatment protocol that I knew would help me cut back on my drinking, but didn't require me to stop. And I will say, you know, I've met a number of people over the years who are in abstinence-based treatment programs and they're really struggling, and they're telling me, you know, I just feel like I'm in a relapse one day. I don't know when, but I know it's going to happen. Like, should I go on this treatment protocol? And so, you know, if someone is doing well in abstinence-based recovery, of course, we would never, ever, ever encourage them to start drinking on this protocol. I think this protocol is really best for people who are already drinking and they don't want to go cold turkey, or they're struggling like I did to quit cold turkey. And so, you know, this method is not for people who are doing well with abstinence, but for people who are in abstinence-based programs and they're really struggling, this method can be an option for them. There's this research that was done actually where they did brain scans of people who were sober 6 months, a year, 2 years, and they would show them images of like an ice cold beer or a glass of wine. And even when they were 2 years sober, their brain would still just light up like a Christmas tree. And so their brain had very much remembered the pleasure from the substance. And, you know, that's why a lot of people, I have people tell me I'm 2 years sober, but I'm still craving alcohol, or I still think about drinking every day, or I have to fight the craving every day. And so for me, that is kind of like, that type of treatment exists and it works for some people, and I would never knock it or insult it in any way, but just the fact that there's another treatment that exists for people like myself who the traditional methods don't work for. You know, we can keep alcohol in our life, we can drink moderately, we can heal our brain, get to the root cause of what's driving our over drinking, and get to a place where we can truly be a normal drinker, or we can stop drinking and not be battling cravings and urges every single day. So there's resources in the description box below. I hope this was helpful for you, and please feel free to reach out. Our contact information is below as well if you have any questions. All right, have a good day. Bye.